They called it a hill of death. Thousands of bullets, hours of brutal hand-to-hand combat, and one of the most disastrous military mistakes in British history. But here's the real kicker. This battle was fought in broad daylight, and neither side even knew who was winning. So what really happened at the Battle of Spioenkop? Imagine a battle so chaotic that soldiers fought at point-blank range through thick fog and smoke, only to realize later they had been shooting at their own men. A battle where commanders had no idea what was happening, and where one of the most famous world leaders of the 20th century was right in the middle of it, before he became famous. This was the Battle of Spioenkop, one of the bloodiest and most bizarre clashes of the Second Anglo-Boer War. But how did it turn into such a catastrophic mess, and what role did a young Winston Churchill play in the disaster? Let's dive into the madness that unfolded on that fateful hill in 1900. Why did this battle happen? By early 1900, the British Empire was desperate to break the Boer siege of Ladysmith, a key town in South Africa. The Boers, a group of fiercely independent Dutch-descended settlers, had already humiliated the British in several battles. The British needed a victory, badly. So they set their sights on Spioenkop, a hill with a commanding view over the battlefield. But what was supposed to be a swift and decisive capture turned into an absolute nightmare. The battle begins. On the night of January 23, 1900, British forces climbed Spioenkop under the cover of darkness. Their mission was to take the summit before dawn and fortify it. They expected an easy victory. After all, they outnumbered the Boers and had superior firepower. But here's where things started going wrong. Terrain nightmare. The British, unfamiliar with the landscape, mistook a small section of the hill for the entire summit. They dug trenches in the wrong place, leaving their flanks exposed. When the sun rose, they realized they weren't in control of the whole hill at all. To make matters worse, the ground was rocky and dry, making it impossible to dig deep enough for proper cover. Soldiers had to crouch in shallow holes, completely vulnerable to enemy fire. Boers strike back. As daylight broke, Boer marksmen opened fire from higher ground, picking off British soldiers with deadly precision. The Boers were expert sharpshooters trained in long-range combat, while the British relied on traditional mass infantry tactics. The difference was brutal. British soldiers fell by the dozens, unable to even see where the shots were coming from. Communication chaos. British officers were cut off from their commanders due to thick fog and smoke. Messages sent between units were delayed, misunderstood, or simply never received. Reinforcements were sent up the hill without realizing the battle was already a disaster. Some troops, lost in the confusion, even retreated without orders, thinking the battle was lost. The chain of command was in complete disarray. For nearly 12 hours, British and Boer forces exchanged brutal rifle fire and bayonet charges. Soldiers fought in such close quarters that they were using rocks, fists, and even their rifle butts as weapons. The trenches overflowed with casualties, some men drowned in the blood-soaked mud. The wounded lay in the trenches for hours, screaming for help as the battle raged on. Medics couldn't reach them because the hill was under constant fire. The sun blazed down on the exposed soldiers and there was no water supply. Men began to collapse from dehydration, exhaustion, and heat stroke. At one point, British reinforcements arriving from the base of the hill opened fire on their own men. The chaos was so extreme that neither side knew who was who. Some soldiers waved white cloths, desperate to signal that they were friendly, only to be gunned down in the confusion. Winston Churchill, at the time a war correspondent, took it upon himself to help transport wounded soldiers down the hill under heavy fire. His actions would later be recognized as some of the bravest efforts of the battle. Churchill was already showing the boldness and leadership skills that would define his future. As the day dragged on, more Boer fighters arrived, further tipping the balance. The British were now trapped in shallow trenches with no reinforcements, no supplies, and dwindling morale. The Boers, on the other hand, were well-positioned, well-supplied, and fighting with the determination of men defending their homeland. As night fell, the British, exhausted, dehydrated, and outgunned, were on the verge of collapse. Reinforcements never came. Morale was shattered. Finally, under the cover of darkness, they abandoned Spioenkop, leaving behind hundreds of dead and wounded. The next morning, the Boers cautiously approached the trenches, only to find them littered with bodies. The battle had ended in a gruesome stalemate, but it was a humiliating defeat for the British. The aftermath, the true cost of failure. Casualties. Over 1,200 British soldiers were killed, wounded, or captured. Boer casualties were significantly lower. Winston Churchill's role, young Churchill, working as a war correspondent, played a daring role in helping wounded soldiers escape the battlefield. His experiences at Spioenkop shaped his views on war and leadership. British military lessons. The disaster forced the British to rethink their tactics. It was a brutal lesson in modern warfare, highlighting the importance of intelligence, communication, and understanding the terrain. The Battle of Spioenkop remains one of the most infamous blunders in British military history. It was a fight defined by confusion, miscommunication, and sheer brutality. But beyond the tactical failures, it was a turning point that changed the course of the Anglo-Boer War and shaped the future leaders of the 20th century. If you enjoy our journey, please like and subscribe to our channel. And if you like our content and want to support me, you are welcome to buy me a coffee. The link is in the description box below.